Good afternoon, my friends. It is a pleasure for me to once again step in to speak with you and to share some thoughts and some feelings on this very pleasant day. The message that was shared with you today about the filters is quite an important one. When I used to teach on the earth plane, I used to say to my students that with most mediums, their old previous religions are always there and bleeds into their mediumship. That filter that of what of the way you were taught as a child to believe and perceive God is a very difficult one to totally eradicate. On that physical camera, I watched a medium take the lens and screw it on the camera and then unscrew it to remove it. A very simple process. It would be so great if it was as easy to do that with the real filters of religion. But unfortunately, it's a very difficult thing to do. It is something that one must work on, and to completely remove it, I would say, is close to impossible. But to make it fade, to make that green color much less or that blue color much less can be achieved to the point where it is almost always gone. But there is a certain amount of residual that remains. It is a certain amount of being human to hold on to the emotions of the past and to the memories of the past and the feelings of the past. Even if they were painful ones, we often do not want to get rid of them totally. We try to block them in some ways, but they're there. They affect us subconsciously. So it's a very difficult thing to do. But what is important to know, is that you are conscious of this so that when certain things happen and you have an instant reaction, you can say, oh, that's my filter. I need to ignore that. It's not really the truth anymore. It's the way I used to believe, but not the way I believe now. So it's important to know that it's there. And so that when it bubbles to the surface and you become aware of it, you can deal with it. And when you deal with it, you're making it fade just a little bit more. So it is an important lesson to know, because the more you can get into the spiritual truths and know that the religious teachings of the past were, for the most part, incorrect. Not 100%, because there's some spiritual truths there, but they have been overlaid with those colors of dogma and colors of belief which are not spiritually true. And those are the things that is helpful for you to dissolve and resolve as you continue on your path. Years ago, I used to teach that the Bible is a book of psychic history. And that is a very true statement. It is true today. It was true back then. But what I had not realized when I taught that was that the amount of spiritual debris that's in there is much, much higher than I ever thought. So while there are pearls of wisdom sprinkled through that book, you need to do a lot of digging to find them, because most of the other rubble that's there is not worth putting in a trash bin. It is man-made dogmas of mind control, of trying to control people so that a certain group of people would have power over your mind and make you do what they wanted you to do and support them financially so they did not have to work very hard. Again, when I walked the earth plane, I did not realize the proportions that I thought were way off, and it was much worse than I ever would have thought. So now that I have shared that information with you, I wish to open it up for your questions. And it is our delight to be here to serve you and to provide you answers. You may
Thank
begin.
you, Carl and friends. We so appreciate you and thank you for being here. So, our first question is from Susan Yu. I have heard for a while that the announcement of the death of Queen Elizabeth would be the last marker in a signal that many changes will begin. Is there truth to this? And please explain what may unfold. Also, has she been dead for quite a while already? And this announcement is not really about the original Queen's death. And finally, is the royal family part of the reptilians and are part of the dark plan? Thank you so very much.
First, we wish to say that the Queen passed over into the world of spirit when you were told she passed over. She has not been gone for any time before that. However, there was much preparation because her death was anticipated. Those who are in the close circles could see that she was in a decline, although publicly she tried to portray, it was portrayed that she was doing fairly well, but in effect she was having more and more difficulty. So there was preparations being made, there was things being put into place behind the scenes, but she passed over into the world of spirit when it was announced. Her passing is truly a shift, as you may call it, a marker, as I believe you stated. It is going to be beginning of many changes. The current king is going to have his hands full trying to control things because he is currently the holder of a very long 1,000-year tradition of monarchy. And what is happening now is that the earth is changing, the vibration is changing, and the whole concept of having a powerful family in control of a country is really coming to a close because all systems are going to have to disintegrate. The new world of that is going to be established, the age of knowledge, as we call it, means that many of the systems that were in existence in the age of ignorance will no longer be standing or being used. With whether you excuse me, whether you were talking about governments or whether you're talking about religions or many social institutions, things are going to change. Things are going to be liberated. So the new king will have his hands full trying to hold on to the old ways because it's kind of a very much uphill battle that he will be facing because of the way of the change of consciousness that is happening on the earth plane. It may come to the point where he becomes so frustrated that he turns it over to his son. His son is much more open. His son has not lived on the earth plane as long. His indoctrination in the old ways is not as steep. The influence from his mother mitigated things from his father. So he has a very different worldview than his father does. And he would have a better time navigating through these changing waters than his father will have, who is much more set in his ways. And speaking of what you were speaking about before, his father has some very strong filters on. And while his son has some filters, but they're not as powerful. They're not as deep. The colors are much less intense than his father's, which would make him a better leader for the times that are coming. So it is the way we see things now. We do not feel that the current king will have a very long reign. And that's not to say that necessarily that he would pass into our dimension, but the fact that he may decide to step down and give his post to his son, because at some point he will come to realize that the public is much more in tune with his son's viewpoint and worldview than his own. So that is what we need to say about that.
Okay.
As far as the reptilians that you are speaking of, we want to say yes and no. The royal family knows about the reptilian race and in some ways worked with them in order to get their power, but they're not exactly reptilians themselves. It's almost like they're in a league or aligned with them, but they're not full members of that group, if you can understand what I'm saying. They did rely on some of their techniques. They did. They were allies at one point, but they weren't full members. Do you understand?
Okay. Thank you. Now, the royal family, are they part of the dark side, the black hats?
They are associated with them. They were with them, but as within the reign of the queen, much of that diminished. Not totally, but she pulled away from that as much as she could or was allowed to because she understood the error of that way of thinking. It is part of the reason why we in the world of spirit try to keep and rejuvenizing her and sending her healing to keep her alive as well as much as possible. So while the tendencies are there, she was trying to pull away from it as much as she could. Her son, on the other hand, will go much more, fall back much more into that way of thinking because he is going to feel as if he is drowning because it's not going to be easy for him to navigate because as we said before, times are changing and he is kind of trying to keep things going upstream instead of going with the flow.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. So I have a follow-up question on Charles, who's now King Charles, because I've recently heard that he was or is a student of the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. So is that true? And if so, how will that influence his leadership?
The new king has had some interesting background information. He was the one who, at some point years ago, financed the republishing of the Arthur Finley books, The Psychic Stream, The Curse of Ignorance, which was very much promoting and teaching spiritualism. The royal family were very much into spiritualism. His great grandmother, Queen Victoria, had many seances and had a medium on board, on staff, in order for her to communicate with her husband who passed over. So mediumship was very much in the background of that family, but it was difficult for them because they are the head of the Church of England. And the Church of England is not all that favorable about spiritualism, as most religions are. So therefore, they um, they had to kind of keep that under the rug as much as they could in order for people not to understand it. But yes, there were many seances have happened in Buckingham Palace through the life of the Queen Victoria, through the life of Queen Elizabeth, and Charles was very much aware and has attended many seances himself. That being said, he was very much open to the Ramtha teachings, and therefore he has to learn, he has as aware of them and is trying to incorporate it as much as he possibly can. He is kind of trying to bridge two worlds. He it has one foot, he has to placate two worlds. He has one foot dealing with the darker side that is had been associated and still is some ties to the family, and he has the enlightenment. He has some of the knowledge of the enlightenment, and he needs to bring that to the forefront. As he goes forth, he will start to understand that bringing that to the forefront is very important, but it's going to make that the dark side very rocky and vociferous, and they will start to try to work against him, and he is going to have to learn how to navigate the two worlds and to kind of get them to coexist, which of course is impossible. So therefore, he has a very big challenge ahead of him.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Fenton. What is the difference between alternate universes and different dimensions? Are advanced life forms able to visit them? Are Earthlings considered to be in a certain dimension or universe? Thank you.
In many ways, it's all one and the same. There are many different dimensions, and that dimension is kind of like its own universe. For example, you are living on the earth plane. It is its own frequency, its own dimension, its own universe. You have become aware of the fact through certain teachers who are able to alter the consciousness and communicate with others in other dimensions and other frequencies and other universes. You have become aware that they exist. But for the majority of the people on this earth plane, they cannot directly access that information because they do not know how to modulate their frequency. They do not know how to modulate their consciousness to go into the other dimensions and to establish links of communication. In some ways, when you are being taught how to use the crystalline energy, you are being taught how to modulate your frequency and modulate your mind so you can talk to the other dimensions and other frequencies. And yes, this is possible, but you have to learn how to access it. You have to learn how to change your frequency and change and modulate to that so that you can have that communication. It definitely can happen, but as far as the terminology, it's pretty much semantics. It's pretty much all in one and the same. But the people in the other frequencies and higher dimensions, usually in order to get there, they have mastered more of the techniques of communication and the techniques of being able to modulate their frequency so that they can go from universe to universe, or frequency from frequency, or dimension from dimension. It's all the same. So they can go to the different ones and can communicate. It is even possible for those on the higher frequencies to take their physical essence, their physical body that they may have, and they may be able to transport it into that other frequency. That is what is termed ascension in your dimension, where you take your physical body and you take it into a higher frequency of the spirit world, and then you can take it elsewhere. That is at the absolute goal of evolution, for you to be able to achieve that. But even if you are not and cannot take your physicalness with you to these other dimensions, you can go there on a frequency level, and therefore have communication, mind-to-mind communication, in order for you to have links to these other worlds. These other worlds are definitely linking back into your frequency. They are monitoring the events that are happening on this plane, and they are going to make themselves known at a certain point, and they will be there to intervene in case something catastrophic were planned to take place. They are there to help to propel it. But in order to stop it, I should say, but in order to do that, it would cause a mass panic and mass um, since most people aren't ready to know about this and do not know of its existence, the sudden existence of extraterrestrials and other beings from other frequencies would be so shocking and scaring to people, because they have been taught to fear this because of what has been programmed out in the media and into the film industry. For so many of these alien creatures, they are scary and dangerous, so that people are afraid of them. But most of them are very benevolent and will be here to help and assist you in the days to come.
Thank you. The next question is from Carol C. In the last few days, the Earth's Schumann resonance has had huge energy fluctuations. Can you expand on what's happening and why this seems to affect our energy? How can we best handle these frequency changes? Is this a marker for greater Earth changes, such as volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, etc.? Thank you.
There are many shifts that are happening in the energy. Some of them are happening from solar energy that's having burps, if you were going to call it that, or changes and changes that are somewhat in the regular cycles of the sun, but is happening. So certain solar flares and certain solar energies are reaching the Earth plane that are unusual and causing other waves. It's very much like if you're standing on a lake and you take a stone and you throw it into the middle of the lake, you will start to see the ripples. In effect, it is the same thing. The solar energy is rippling into the earth energy and causing certain disruptions and certain changes to happen. Some of these changes will assist on the current shift of energy from the earth of becoming into a higher frequency. And as this happens, of course, other certain people will react to it and become very uncomfortable because they're not used to this higher frequency, and may cause them to act out in negative ways because they are not flexible to go with the flow. One of the um, um, benefits for you to be doing the work that you are doing with energy is that it keeps you fluid. It keeps you in a sense of changing your frequency, of expanding your energy. That is building a certain amount of flexibility within your own consciousness, so that when these frequency changes happen, you are able to roll with the flow, if you want to use that term, go with the flow, and it will not affect you in a negative way. You will just modulate to this new energy and start to exist there without much of a change, although you may be aware that there has been a shift and be aware of it, but it will not cause you the irritation and bring out negativity in with you. So we ask you to continue to, in your meditations, to work with the expanding divine crystalline energy, expanding your auric field, changing your frequency, because that is, it's like keeping the elasticity in the rubber band going. You know that if you have a rubber band that you don't use for a long time, it kind of dries out and it doesn't really expand too much anymore. It will snap. So we want you to keep your flexibility going, because the frequencies of the earth plane, it will be shifting on a continual basis, not in not large shifts most of the time. It will slowly be a modulation, but it will be changing. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you. Okay, one other question from Carol. I understand that the chemtrails have been taken over by the white hats and that they are now spraying an antidote to the COVID-19 vaccines. Is this true? If so, how effective is it?
The There has been much going on in order to counteract these vaccines. There is more and more evidence coming to the surface that young infants who were given the vaccine and young people who are given the vaccine are having negative physical effects from it. It is bringing on heart conditions. It is bringing on other conditions that is that's detrimental to physical life. The What you are talking about is a way to inhale an antidote. So by putting it into the atmosphere and having it breathed into for the people who have received the vaccines, it will help to start to create a chemical reaction within their bodies to help retard the detrimental effects that were inserted into the vaccine. The We in the world of spirit have been working diligently with the scientists and with the people, inspiring them in order to bring about these antidotes for people to help counteract the damage that was done by those who took whatever vaccine they had taken. It is important for you to understand, since you are working with energy and frequency, that if you had taken a vaccine, that you have the ability to open yourself up to the world of spirit and to ask them to work on counteracting whatever is going on within your own body in order to heal and bring you back into balance. It is a conscious choice for you to do that. It should be part of your meditative practice, part of your, when you go into the energy and you open yourself up to the divine crystalline energy, that you do it with the intent that this energy go through your body and heal your body 100%, and to remove or counteract any chemical things that may be within the body that shouldn't be there. So that is a healing practice that you should be consciously aware of. You set the intent before you to go into the energy, and therefore, when you are in the energy, the because of your intent, it will go through and begin to work on that. And if you do this on a continual basis, it will also help you yourself to modulate the effects that are within your body from the vaccine that you received. Do you understand?
Okay, thank you. And kind of as a follow up to that, at one point, Ramtha had told us as we go through all of these changes that we would lose like 2/3 of the world's population. Do you think that's still true? I mean, with all the work we've done on raising our frequency, I mean, worldwide, we can just feel it's the frequency, the energy is raising. Have we come to a point where we've helped to lift that a little bit?
My friend, the answer is yes, and the answer is no. We spoke to you a little while about using the energy to keep yourself flexible in frequency. Those people who are flexible in frequency will be able to survive all this. Those people who are not flexible or who are inflexible, who have no idea of what anything that you guys are talking about in this meeting today, who live their lives in recycled ignorance, in the dogmas of religion, they are as rigid as can be. And unfortunately, as things go on, many of them will not survive because they will not be able to take the changes that are happening. So we say to you, yes, there will be people who will not survive this. There will be people who are. The exact proportions are changing. So will it be 2/3? We cannot say that at this time. But there will be a portion of people who will not survive going into the age of knowledge because they simply cannot stand it. It is going to be a tremendous amount of change in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of ways. Your religions are going to dissolve. Most of your governments are going to dissolve. Most of the social restrictions, your social consciousness is going to resolve. Lots of people will not be able to stand all that, and they will not make it. Those who are more enlightened and more flexible will be able to. So, unfortunately, the people who are so closed-minded and so set in their ways would not be able to live in the age of knowledge. It will be so radically different. And that is why so much is being tried to help people who are who will find themselves in a state of panic and a state of confusion when they realize that things were not the way they were taught it was. This is part of the reason we are trying to get these teachings out to help people bridge and help people become flexible, because there will be a certain amount of time where people who are knowledgeable enough to know that they need to change and look at the new ways and start to explore them and start to accept them can make it into the age of knowledge. But those who cannot, who are stuck in their rigidity, whose mind is in deep cement and feet are in deep cement, they will not survive. Unfortunately, there's no other way to avoid that. Do you understand?
Okay. Thank you all. We appreciate your being here. That was the last question. Thank you. We love you and we thank you.
It is our pleasure that we could come back and assist you with information. As was stated, the times ahead are going to be difficult to transverse for many people. Even those who are enlightened, as you are, may find it somewhat of a challenge and somewhat of um, a challenge to go with the flow into where things are going to go. But we are always here to assist you. You have the keys to the kingdom. You have the ability and are learning the ability to talk with us, to be in communication with us. so that we can give you information to help and assist you with how to navigate the quagmires that are going to be coming your way. They will be challenging, but they will not be impossible, and we are here to help you. So we do not want you to be afraid of the days to come. We want you to welcome the age of knowledge with open arms, even though the transition to it will be quite tricky and quite not difficult, but challenging for you to to navigate. But do not be afraid. What is important for us to stress to you is to always be in the moment. Live your life now. Do not be too rooted into the past. Be rooted into the present. Know that you are always there walking alongside you. Know that you can change your frequency quite easily or quite readily by taking a few moments to go into the quiet and expanding yourself into the crystalline energy, connecting with us and allowing us to influence your mind and influence your thoughts to help you make decisions along the way. We are here to help, and we will walk through you alongside you through everything that is happening. You have these keys, you have the skills that you are developing. So we ask you to be diligent in your practice of them, be diligent so that when the time comes and you are in need of our guidance, that you can sit, go into the energy and hear our words and hear our thoughts, and we will be there to help protect you. Do not be afraid. Walk in knowledge, walk upright and straight and proud, and be a light unto the world. For there will be many people who will be seeking help and how to do what you are already doing, and you will be there to teach them. Go forward with confidence and know that you walk in the light of spirit and truth. Our blessings go with you. So be it.